Okay, so welcome everyone from the Israeli gaming industry. Great to see the same familiar faces again. My name is Shai Shemtov. I will just do a quick introduction of myself and I'll let the panel team introduce themselves. What have they done? We have a really great lecture for you today. Talking mostly giving you practical advice and tips from our experience on how to publish your game on Steam. Really, we'll try to do it following from the A to Z, trying to cover everything. We will leave questions, let's say, for the last 30 minutes. So let's do it like until 10 or maybe a bit more. We will have the microphone, we will talk. As usual, everyone else, if you haven't participated in a webinar, some rules, keep on mute. It would be very nice to see your faces. So that way we can make fun of you later that you don't understand what we are saying. And other than that, let's get started. Really pleasure to see everyone that is here. So my name is Shai. I am the CEO and one of the co-founders of Gavra Games. My better half, Lior Hadashian, my cousin, and we are the creator of Warriors Rise to Glory. Participated in the Shark Tank show. We're able to raise some money for an indie title, which is not an easy job, and I can elaborate more on that if you guys want later. And that's it. Like, I think 99% of the people here, hardcore gamer, really passionate about the gaming industry. So yeah, just follow the dream and living it day by day, even though sometimes it's like a nightmare, but still enjoying it. Let's say hi, first of all, to our guest from abroad. We'll give him the respect he deserves. So Antonio, you have the mic.
Hi, nice to meet you all. Happy to be here with you. Thank you very much for the invitation. It's a pleasure to be here. As Shay said, I'm Antonio Santo. I'm CEO of Jaleo PR. It's a PR slash consulting company specialized in indie games and in the games industry. We've been working for the last 5 years, a bit and we've got a bit of everything in our lineup. We've been working for pretty big indie companies. Indies only because they aren't part of any major conglomerate like Tailwolves for the Mountain Blade franchise, to one-man army teams at games made by just one person. For instance, like Tomer here, creator of Judgment, Apocalypse Survival Simulation. So we are focusing mostly on marketing and biz dev for our clients, but we do all kind of communication stuff, influencer relation, media outreach. So we've got a pretty wide point of view of this industry and the work and life of being an indie developer.
From an experience, so I can tell you that Antonio is one of the most talented PR agencies I had the chance to work with, and especially in an indie budget, which is not something that everyone can do. So Tomer, you're up.
Hi everyone, I'm Tomer. I'm the founder of Suncrash. We've released one game on Steam that's called Judgment Apocalypse Survival Simulation, and it was made by two people, Antonio, not just one.
Mostly one.
Yeah, no, two. Equally two. And then now we're working on Dream Engines Nomad Cities. It's our second title, and we plan to release it this year. We're a little bit bigger now. We're 3. So there's that. We have the first game was successful on Steam, and it covered all its expenses and most of the development costs for the second game. And the second game we hope will be successful too. We already have many wish lists and a lot of interested parties.
Yeah, can I lift you a little bit, Tomer, for the next game?
What?
להרים לך, אפשר רגע להרים לך למשחק הבא? כן. בקיצור, what Tomer is really modest and saying that his next game is going to be like the biggest game that came out of Israel on Steam, but we'll see.
Now you're just making me setting high expectations.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about how you can, what is the path that awaits you guys when you start developing a title for Steam. And I see a lot of familiar faces. Some already published a game, some are on early access. Some of you maybe just starting your road. So we will start right from the beginning. When and this is something that we need to talk, because again, as I mentioned, everyone here, I guess, comes with a lot of passion about games. So initially our first thought is, let's do an MMORPG. Let's go like big scale. We can have objects and crafting and with communication. It will be simultaneously. So let's talk a little bit about how do you pick your genre and your game scope, which that's pretty much where you start. Or if you guys think that there is like something that comes before that, please let me know. So Tomer, you start.
Something that comes before that is the team, of course, because you should choose your genre and game concept depending on your team's preferences and abilities. So there's that. We like strategy games mostly, survival strategy, like hardcore hard games, and so that's what we're making. It's also a pretty good market if you have the capabilities to make such games. It's a bit hard to make those games, but that also means that there is not too much competition compared to some lower difficulty genres like point and click and platformers, for example. They're easier to make, and there's a lot more competition there. So that's one thing that I like and I believe in, working in genres that are a bit harder to make games for, um, but have less competition. And in terms of scope, I'm a firm believer of small teams with small to medium scope of a game, because especially for your first few games, because there's pretty good chance that the first few games will fail, and unfortunately, and it's better to fail small and not big. If you're a small team and you've only worked for a year or two, we released our first game after 1 year to early access, and we were a team of two. So the cost of making it was small. Breaking even is fairly simple. I mean, it's not easy, but it's easier than if we were a 10-person team working for 3 years. And I really believe that is the best way to go. But I also understand that other teams have other preferences. I believe in minimizing risk and making it, but still making it unique and interesting enough so that there's a good chance to break even.
What you say is, I think it's very important. I mean, it's an essential way of approaching things. Will I survive this if I fail? That's a very important question to ask yourself when you're starting a company or starting a business. And I'm looking at this strictly from a business point of view. When you're deciding the scope, I think the most important thing should be try to do something that is within your means, obviously, within your abilities, small enough to be survivable if you fail, but also scalable, something that you can make bigger and better if it works. If you start reaching out to, your target audience or publishers or the media or influencers, and you see there's a lot of interest, you're getting lots of wish lists. If you've got the right concept, you can make your original idea bigger. If you are stuck in something too small, then it's much more difficult to escalate from there. But if you start too big, you can find yourself in a situation where you have to choose between death or death, because if you keep going forward, you're just accumulating debt and problems and issues. And if you stop, you have a debt that you cannot repay because you're not releasing a game. That, when it comes to scope, when it comes to choosing a genre, there's also two ways of approaching this. You can try to find out, okay, what's working, what's selling. Let's try to do something that's popular. But what's popular now will probably not be popular in a couple of years when you're finished your game. and predicting what's going to be popular is very difficult. So even from a business point of view, I think the cleverest way of approaching this is do what you're best at, do what you know best, do what you like, do the kind of game that you would like to play. Once you have this core concept of the kind of game you want to do, then you can sit down at the design table and start talking about marketing, because you should start definitely talking about marketing as soon as possible to see if there's an audience for that. You shouldn't start coding before checking if there's water in the pool. But at least you should start the brainstorming sessions with something you like, with a concept you would be comfortable and happy working in for the next couple of years. If not, you'll be miserable in 3 months.
Yeah, what I would like to say also, first of all, everything that we say here is take with a grain of salt, because again, there's no rules for that. But what can really improve, anything that we're saying right now can really improve your chances of success, or at least decreasing your chances of failing, because the chances are probably against you. So you need to do whatever you can to reduce that. In terms of also what I wanted to add is picking the right genres for Steam itself, because there are genres that are not as popular there, and you should just probably stay clear of it. So another thing that I would add is do the market research before you're picking the genre, even though you should do what you love. And if you are a puzzle game enthusiast, you should do it. Just be aware that Steam is probably not the right platform for you to do your puzzle game, unless you're talking about, of course, a Portal, for example.
But if you're a freaking genius, nothing applies, because you're going to
true.
Stick your head out of the crowd no matter what. But yeah, doing some market research is always a good idea. But there's some intuitions. Tomer just said it. If you like strategy games, that's a very difficult genre to design, because balancing a good strategy game is a pain. But you know that it's relatively easy. I mean, it's not a living hell to seek out of the crowd. There's not that many strategy games. The audience is super loyal. It's a niche, pretty big niche. So I'd say think of a concept, then check if there's a market for that concept. If there isn't, you can discard the idea safely, because it's free at that point. Pre-production is super important. At that point, anything you try is pretty much free. It's just your time, which, I mean, you have to pay yourself. You have to. I have the bad custom of eating 3 meals a day. But you have not spent 100,000 euros, and you're not incurring into any technical debts, that kind of thing. At that point, try, imagine, be wild. Do check if there's a market for it, and decide with all the information in hand. But don't be afraid of thinking wild things. Even though, yes, you say, I want to do a puzzle platformer. Maybe try something else. There's too many of them. Steam is overcrowded. So there are genres that by themselves will complicate your lives.
Yeah.
Just the same as if you try to do, I want to do the next The Witcher 4,
Yeah.
from my bedroom with my 5 friends.
Go for it. Tomer, anything you want to add on this?
Just that I'm posting in the chat pretty nice websites that they have a newsletter, and they also have a paid tool that lets you see hype for unreleased games, and then you can compare it to what happens after the release. I like this for market research. And the other thing for market research is just looking at the games on Steam and seeing how many reviews they have, and the number of reviews scales more or less with number of copies sold. So those tools are my favorite for market research.
Yeah, another practical, take the amount of reviews, multiply it by between 50 to 60, and that's pretty much a rough number of how many downloads the game has.
The range usually goes from 50 to 80, 90, something like that.
Okay.
Not anymore. Not since Steam started pushing people to recommend. So now it's more like 40, 50. But anyway, I didn't mention a number on purpose. As long as you're comparing games to one another and you say this game has 50 and this game has 500, that's what matters for the market.
But at the end of the day, it can help understand how much you estimate to sell. So you say, okay, we have a game that is like Battle Brothers, for example, and they sold, I don't know, 300,000 copies. So you can kind of get an estimation of what to expect. Okay, next. So we picked the genre, we have the team. What is next? Like, what are the next steps that we need to do? Tomer, I want you to start, and then we'll see if we all think alike or we have different approaches.
Are we talking about production? Because maybe we should focus more on Steam.
No production. No, nothing regarding production whatsoever. We're talking marketing on Steam. So, for example, when do we open the store page? What about community? What comes before what?
Okay. Yeah, so publishing your store page is a major milestone. Of course, it's not as big as release, but it is pretty big, and I think you should. Some people say do it as early as possible. I personally prefer to announce the game with when you have good stuff to show, like a good trailer, an interesting trailer, good screenshots, because it's a newsworthy event. It's an event that you can use to contact press and YouTubers, and the Steam page itself. When you just launch it, it will get a little bit more traffic than it will get later. And if you waste this opportunity, this newsworthy event for when you have bad or temporary artwork and no gameplay video, it's a missed opportunity, because you will not be able to generate as much hype as you can. Later on, you will make an announcement, hey, I have a new trailer. It's not the same. Having a new trailer is not the same as announcing a new concept, a new game. So I think you should publish a Steam page and announce your game when you have enough to make it so it will appear interesting, so it will draw the interest of the players, wish lists, and the press. And Antonio can tell you about press much better than I can.
I agree with that up to some extent. You shouldn't open a Steam store page without good assets. That's definitely true, but you should try to have some good assets to show as soon as possible, in my opinion. Why? Because although it's true that releasing the store page is an event by itself, it should be the hub of your community. You want your community to be as close as possible to the buy button. So you don't want your promotion to be Twitter centered or Discord centered. You need Discord and Twitter and so forth, but it's all a means to driving people to Steam. So if you start putting a lot of work into Twitter and you, I don't know, reach 5,000 followers, that's great. How many of them will stay with you for a year and then transition to store page? So that's why you should have, as soon as possible, somewhere to lead them to. So it's a call to action. All your promotion is a call to action. And the action you want them to do is wishlist, follow, then buy. So it's true, don't release a half-assed store page with, stick figures and placeholder art or something like that. But try to have something you can show as soon as possible, so you can start driving people to your store page and releasing their diaries and blogs and artwork and so forth, because marketing should start as soon as possible, because it takes a long time for an indie to grow an audience. You don't have the resources to put an ad everywhere and hire all the big influencers and so on. So you have to rely on guerrilla marketing warfare tactics. That's a lot of that takes knocking on a lot of doors and being reaching out to your audience so it's personal for them and they get to know you, and that takes time. So the best the cheapest way for an indie to do marketing is to start as soon as possible and do it themselves, and making it personal, making it about the story about their project, their team, and their philosophy, the creative philosophy. But you need to lead them to where you want them to be. That's the store page.
Yeah, I actually completely agree. Um, I when you announce the game, when you release an announcement to the press and to people, and you start telling about your new game in your Twitter and in your blog, you should already have a Steam page. You should
Yes.
not. You should already have a Steam page and drive everyone there.
You know, many times I've had prospect clients reaching out to me, hey, I want to hire you because I want to take marketing seriously. Okay, when are you releasing your game? In a week or yesterday. It's like, I understand that when it's the first project of a studio because they don't know, but they don't know better, but you should start doing marketing, as I said, in the pre-production table. If you do it right, that doesn't mean putting ads everywhere. That means sitting down to do market research, having a very clear picture of what your target audience is, what's the kind of player you want to have in your game. If you have that in pre-production, when you've got a store page and some assets you can show, you can start building a community and taking the steps necessary to build a community because you know the audience you are reaching out to. You have done your market research. If you haven't, then you're just randomly tweeting or randomly chatting with people on Discord. You need to have a plan. Even if you change it every fortnight, that doesn't matter. The thing is, you have to sit down and think of what you're doing, because if not, you're just beating the bushes.
When I choose a concept for a new game, before I accept the concept, I already know what the first trailer will look like and what the short description on Steam will look like. If I can't find a good idea for a trailer and the short description that will draw attention for this concept is bad, and I'm moving on to the next one.
Exactly. I've seen so many people that don't understand their own games. They don't understand what makes their games appealing or why their games aren't appealing. It takes more thinking than it looks like. You have to sit down and really decide, okay, what's this game about? What's the core gameplay about? What are the unique selling points, the key features? You need to have that, what you say, the short description. That's a very useful exercise. Sit down and write what the short description of your game will be or you want to be. So you know, if someone, you have your pitch, your elevator pitch. If someone asks, what's your game about? You have one line that defines your game. I mean, you mentioned Battle Brothers. They happen to be my clients too. What's the game about? You lead a mercenary company.
Yep.
That's it.
Simple. And do you see, like, think trailer, don't think of a game, think of a short trailer that you can make. That's actually a good tip because it's much less complicated. It's just very straightforward. Cool. So, and also something that is important for players to understand, no one exactly knows how the Steam algorithm works. But when your game gets an initial, let's say, wishlist push on your launch, which is not on your launch, sorry, on your date that you open the store page, it kind of has a tendency to push more. And if you set your tags right, so this is why both of them, I agree with them. It's a very important event that is happening, not the most important, but a very important milestones that you need to be aware of. That, for example, if you open your store page, ask friends, ask family, build a community. If you had like a small community before, just tell them to wishlist your game because it helps. The more, the better. Okay, next. So something that we want to discuss about building a community. So when should you start that? Because I see a lot of developers that kind of have a rough time with how to build their community. Some of them are going to Kickstarter. I'm personally very against, but it works sometimes.
Please don't go to Kickstarter if you don't have a community in place already.
Yeah, this is why. Listen to this guy; he knows what he's talking about. I think you've also managed like a campaign or two on Kickstarter, right? Yeah. So okay, I'll let you talk more about that. So any tips you guys have on how you can reach out your audience, how you can build your community?
Please begin.
I don't remember, honestly, because for this new game, a big part of the community is our audience from the first game. We put a banner on the Steam store page of our first game leading to our second game, and we put a like, it's not a pop-up, but it's like a blinking message in the title screen of Judgment that leads players to Dream Engines. And that alone got us like 5,000 newsletter subscribers and much more than that wish lists. So that's one way. And this strengthens my original point: make small games fast rather than make big games slow. Because the more games you have, the more you can cross promote and make the most of it. But other than that, pre-release is hard today. It was easier 2 years ago because Steam algorithm would show upcoming games in many places in the store, but the players got angry because they kept saying games that they can't buy and just, getting them excited, but then they see that it's not out, and sometimes it could be 3 years before it was launched. So Steam stopped showing upcoming games almost entirely. They show very little upcoming games and only the most popular ones, those that get hundreds of wish lists every day anyway. So it's hard now. And there are a few cool places that you can use to get. So first, as soon as you have playable builds, you can start an alpha program or just reaching out to influencers, YouTubers, streamers, and let them play the game. Just let them maybe give them a few of them exclusive access to the game before even the players have access to it for the alpha. And then when you start an alpha programs, and some of the alpha players will be streamers and YouTubers, and they will show the game. So that's one way to do things, reaching out to influencers when you have a playable build. And the other one is events. There are a lot of events going on, and these days many of them are online, which is great for people living in Israel because going to physical events is hard for us. So all these online events, they get exposure. And many of them even get a Steam store page for that event that shows all the games of that event. And those events are sometimes, even often, featured on the front page of Steam. So every player that opens the Steam page, they see, hey, here's the Digital Dragons event. They click that page, and then they see all the games of Digital Dragons. You can get hundreds and even thousands of wish lists per day from those events if you have a good position and the event itself is interesting. And there's also the Steam Festival, Steam Summer Festival, Steam Winter Festival. Those are festivals for upcoming games. You have to have a public demo that everyone can play to participate in this event, and you can only participate in one. But I know games that got tens of thousands of wish lists just from that one. We got a few thousands ourselves. So those are things that come to mind. And of course, there's guerrilla marketing, the usual Facebook, Twitter, and stuff. But it's very hard. It's very hard for an unknown studio without an audience to use those.
Yeah, the thing is that it's more an art than a science, community management and community growth. When you have a game, when you have a prototype, a build you can show, as Tomer said, there's many things you can do to put the game under the spotlight and hope for the best. At some point, if you have a game you can show, those who play the game and like it will join your community, or at least a significant portion of them. But what to do before, so you reach that stage with more, with a better chance, a better shot. As I said, it's more an art than a science, and it's easier for some people than for other. And game developers tend to be coders and engineers, which have less experience in this kind of social interaction, social life. I'm trying to be diplomatic here, okay? Now, jokes aside, thing is, you don't have a game yet, right? You don't have a game you can sell yet. So you have to sell them a story. If you look at, I don't know, Elon Musk, Tesla, the guy didn't say, hey, I've got these cool cars. He said, electricity is the future of automotion. Now that's a cool story. Do you want to hear more about? So in this, have a small advantage over AAA games is that you guys can make it personal. Ubisoft cannot afford to be personal. They have to be super corporate, super, clean and polite and so forth, because it's a massive company and some games are for kids and some games are for adults. But you can do it in a different way. If you understand your audience, let's go back to the example of Battle Brothers. Your audience will probably be adults because it's a very difficult game, probably be fans of history and military history and medieval stuff and probably fantasy. So you already have a picture in mind. What kind of people will be my fan? So you can start creating a story around you and your job and the game you're doing. You can let them know all the different steps of the development and share with them how the animations are evolving. I see this guy from, what's the name, Wildfire or something like that. He's been sharing pixel art animations for years. He gathered a big audience just because the animations were so good looking. So find out how your audience is, find out the strong points of your game that will resonate with them, and build the story, be natural, just be there on Twitter or Discord or Facebook, post your dev diaries, talk about your pains and tribulations of being an indie developer. Be natural and join the conversation, not just post your stuff, be around the big hashtags, reach out to people directly, talk to them. Once we got a game promoted by Notch, Minecraft guy, just because we sent him a tweet. I think you will like this game. You send 200 like that, and only one guy pays attention to you, but one guy can make a difference. So it's a bit like that. If you're in Reddit is we've been doing a lot of promotion on Reddit as of lately. You join the community, I don't know, strategy games, and you talk about other games, and eventually you mention you're doing this cool strategy game, and people can learn more about it here and there. It's a bit like attending a party where you don't know anyone. You have to join a lot of circles and introduce yourself and be nice, be fun to be around with, which is, again, it's very difficult for a lot of people. But at some point, I think it's you get used to it and it feels more natural. I don't know if you have had this experience of you didn't even try with social media and so forth, but I've seen for some people was much more natural than for others. And for instance, some games like Spire of Sorcery by my friend and client Sergei Klimov studio, Charlie Oscar. He's been posting their diaries for years, and he's got a pretty big audience just because their diaries are super detailed and to the point, and he's a great writer. If your game has great art, you can do concept to final posts or go to Twitch to do live streams of how you draw. Find your thing, find your story, and tell it to as many people as possible.
And this is where what we talked about before, thinking about how you will sell the game or how you will attract people to the game, even when you work on the concept. That's very important because, and I know this from personal experience, because my first game, Judgment, even with Antonio's help, we were barely able to get any press, even when we released the full version of the game. And Dream Engines, it has a much more interesting concept of a flying city, much more unique. And when we just announced the game, when we just said, hey, we're working on a new game, this is the concept, we already had 3 big magazines cover us, PC Gamer, Destructoid, and Kotaku.
Omer, do you
So-
think, can I, sorry, interrupt? I just have a question. Do you think that it's mainly because of the concept or because you're already a studio that has proven itself and had a successful title on Steam? So it's not just a unknown studio that's launching the game.
The concept for sure, because I didn't even use any personal connections. I don't have any personal connections with the press, and I didn't even email anyone personally. I just released a press release to gamespress.com, and someone, I think Destructoid, picked it up, and they liked the idea of a flying city. The art is definitely one point as well, because the game looks much better. But I think especially what interested them was the concept. And you could see that from the titles. One of them said, build a city and then bugger off before it's destroyed. And the other one called it, oh, just don't make a Columbia from BioShock, the flying city. So yeah, it's mostly the concept. And this is very important, especially and newsworthy events like the announcement, like releasing a new trailer, newsworthy events are also an opportunity to get some visibility, especially with press, less so with YouTubers in this regard, more with press. And Antonio is not going to say it, but I am. Work with a PR company, because you guys are, if it's your first game and you don't know how to market a game, and you don't have the connections and the experience, work with a PR company, either for consultation or let them do all the work. It helps a lot.
It's probably cheaper than you think also. and it's definitely cheaper than failing.
Depends with who.
Okay. Tomer, I would add just to send that although the concept and the key art are the most important thing, at the end of the day, the single most important thing in marketing is the product. No marketing can save a bad game or a game that is not appealing. But it does help a lot if you've got a track record. I mean, all the media fell for Cyberpunk because it was CD Projekt and they had made The Witcher 3. If an unknown company came promising all that promises, no one would have believed them. So while Dream Engines is more eye-catching than Judgment, it also comes from an indie developer that has proved his mettle and has a record of successes and has a community. I've been a journalist before I was in PR. When I was deciding if I was covering something or not, I was thinking if the story was interesting, yes, but also if it was going to bring me audience, because I needed to, fill the pub to sell some drinks, figuratively speaking. So you see a cool indie game, you cover it just to discover it to your audience. If you've got some free time in your hands, you see a cool indie game and you go to Steam and you see that it comes from a successful developer, you do post it. It means a lot. So
yeah,
both things help.
It's a combination. It's not that
Yes.
there is like a rule that, okay, only a company that already published a game, or if it's only art. So art helps, and it like everything. The art style helps. The fact that you had a previous game helps. The fact that you have a good product definitely helps. The fact that you have a good story also helps. So it's a pie that is divided by a lot of cuts. Just be aware of that. Let's say we open our store page. Now we need to pay attention to how we can organically push the game. I think most of the views that you get are coming within Steam. This is why it's very, very important that you pick your tags right. So if you guys can elaborate on that more, on how to pick your tags and how to do to work with the wizard tool that Steam has now. About that. Maybe Tomer, you should start.
I always start. I'll start because I have something to say about tags.
I see, I know.
If having tags is super important, and 5 years ago when we launched Judgment, there was nothing to make sure that you have tags. So we added the genres, strategy, and we added another tag, post-apocalypse or something like that, and that's it. And we released the game with 2 or 3 tags. And the release was pretty good. We sold a few thousand copies in a week. It was pretty good for our first game, and we had no idea how it would do. And we were all excited. But after the release month and after we lost the launch visibility, it dropped. And we started selling 1 or 2 copies a day in a good day. And we were a little bit disappointed. And I think 3 months later, this player wrote to me in Facebook, "Hey, how come I never heard about this game? Steam doesn't show it to me. Why don't you market it on Steam? Why don't you add the tags?" And you know what? Okay, let's add tags. I added some more tags, and I asked my friends to tag the game. The next day, we sold 5 times as many copies. And the day after that, when I did some tag optimization, so it will be a bit more similar to games that are relevant to us, we sold 10 times as much. So in 2 days, we went from selling 1 to 2 copies a day to 50, 60 copies a day, just because we added tags on Steam. Now, a similar thing happened to another friend, that launched their game on Steam, and they weren't selling so much. And I told them about the tags. I noticed it as well. And they added their tags, and they also started selling like 5 times as much. But that won't happen anymore, because now there's a tag wizard on Steam that forces you to add tags, and Valve learned from these mistakes. And so games now will have tags. And then tags were still very important, because depending on the tags you chose for the game, it would show in more like this section. At the bottom of every store page, there's a more like this section, and it shows games that are similar to that game. And if you get to a more like this section of a popular game, like we were in the more like this section of Factorial, of RimWorld, of Kenshi, so every place that we were in the more like this section, it got a lot of visits and a lot of sales, and it was super important. However, 1.5, 2 years ago, Steam changed their algorithm. People were creating survival games and calling it cute and farming simulation and life simulation just so they can appear in Stardew Valley more like this and have nothing to do with the game. And as always, when players abuse the game, Steam go to Valve, change the algorithm to prevent this kind of abuses. And since then, the games that appear in the more like this section, and there are other places in the store that also use the same algorithm, and they now show the most popular games. So even if you have 14 similar tags to the other game, and there's a popular game that has only 10 similar tags, they will show the popular game with the 10 tags, and they won't show your game. So
that's bad news, by the way.
That's bad news.
That's bad news.
Yeah, but also, good news, because now if you make a good game, a popular game, then you will get more exposure. So it depends on where you are. So today, tags are not as important for the algorithm as they were before. And that's why my recommendation today would be to choose tags that help show your game and differentiate it. And more than that, put the tags that are most that describe your game best at the top, because then when people open your store page, the first thing they see when they open your store page, and even when they hover your thumbnail in different places in the store, they see your title, your screenshot. When they open the store page, they see the short description, and just under the short description, there are 4 or 5 tags, and that's their first impression of the game. And if your first 5 tags are simulation, strategy, action, indie, early access, that's not very informative, and it will not help differentiate the game. So I would recommend popular tags, so tags that are not too unique, so not something that is too unique and only like 10 games have it, but that are more descriptive. So we chose City Builder and Automation for Dream Engines, for example, and for Judgment, we chose colony simulation and post-apocalyptic and stuff like that. So that would be my recommendation today in the current Steam ecosystem and algorithm.
Yeah, they don't make as big a difference as they used to do. However, someone said in the comments, Arnold Nessis, You can see all the games your game is shown on us more like this in steamlikes.com. That's useful because of what I was about to say is that tags don't only define your game, it also define your competition, the kind of games you are pitting your game against, and your audience. So in that sense, my recommendation is the same as Synthomer. Don't be too specific when defining your tags, because then you're um, being or defining an audience that will be too small and irrelevant. Don't, on the other hand, don't say indie and multiplayer or something like that, because that's too in a specific. That's the same as saying nothing at all. But you can try to be, I mean, while being um, faithful to what your game is, actually, you can try to um, sort of decide what tags will be more interesting from a marketing point of view to your game. For instance, we're now working with a visual novel that is going to be released in many months from now. So it's got a long way to go. It's a very philosophical thing, lots of things. And the author asked, why not to put philosophy or philosophical or something like that as a tag? Because it's a very important thing for the game. And it was like, yeah, that's fine. It's a very important thing for the game, but how many people go to Steam looking for philosophy? Let's try to, I don't know, alternate history or something like that. That's going to be probably, or this topic that's probably going to be more popular. So while you have to be as close to your game as possible, do take some liberty and don't put yourself in a cage that's too small for you. And it's definitely useful to use steamlikes.com and see what kind of games will you be put into with the tags you're considering. Not a big deal anyway. You can change the tags at any point. It's not written in stone.
I have to say though that Steam likes it used to be good, but today it's a bit it, it it's not very accurate because a lot of they count the game that appears first in the store page the same as they count a game that will only appear if you click the extra link and scroll all the way down. They count them the same, so it's not very informative, unfortunately, for those decisions anymore. But do research similar games. So if you when you want to choose your tags, look at similar games, look at how they are tagged. Don't copy, change according to how different your game is from that game. But it's a great way to find interesting tags by looking at similar games that are successful.
Cool. So let's say we had our store page open. We're getting a lot of wish lists. Our tags are fine. And the day has finally arrived and we want to launch the game. First of all, before we do that, I want to discuss either the option to go early access or not going early access or just fully launch the game. Just to hear your 2 cents, what do you think about that? Do you recommend going on early access beforehand or just going full launch? What's your approach? I know, like, but tell to everyone.
I love early access, honestly.
I think we all love early access here. This is why I'm.
Depends on the genre, though. If you're doing a story-driven game, it probably makes no sense for you. But if it's something either procedurally generated or that can benefit from people playing it for a long time, or that it can escalate. I mean, if you're doing a graphic adventure, that's the kind of game that you cannot escalate. It's got a story. Either the story is complete or it isn't. Once the story is complete, you've got QA maybe, but you can add more chapters to the story. But the concept itself is what it is. If you're doing a strategy game, you can add more enemies, more scenarios, more buildings, more skills, more whatever. So that's the kind of concept you can grow. Early access allows you to test in a safer environment to see where the true potential of a game is, because you can take a longer time developing new things and trying new things. The early access crowd is very special too. The kind of gamer that puts up with a game in development usually is really looking forward to taking a part in the community and trying new things and taking risks as a player too. And you're not wasting the first month visibility of a full release. If you're not 100% sure of what you're doing, you can release in a short early access period, 3-4 months. Use that as a preview campaign with the press and influencers, and then transition to full release later on, which would be safer than just dropping the game and wishing the best. As I said, it takes a special kind of game. It's not suited for all games out there. But if your game can escalate from its initial concept, by all means, definitely go for early access. It's a great place for indie games to be.
But let's look at it in like more of let's say I don't recall the English word for it, like a more observant way. For example, some people may say that because you're launching on early access, then you're losing some of the visibility and you're like spreading out your press. Like you have early access and then you were on early access for a while, so the game is not as new title, so it's less interesting. So it comes at some sort of a price as well.
I disagree from my own experience working on this. Well, it depends. If you've been in early access for 5 years, then probably yes. By the time the game comes out, it's old news. But that depends, because if the game is successful, I mean, when Mount and Blade came out of the original early access, because it was in beta for years, it was a big thing because the game was a big thing. So if you're big enough, you're going to attract attention no matter what. At the same time, you can recover from a bad or underwhelming early access on full release if you do the right thing. Again, I'm going back to a client story. In this case, it's a well-known story, so I'm not violating any NDA. Gremlins Inc. by Charlie Oscar, their first game. It was also the first game I worked for as a PR. It was a board game, card-based board game from a virtually unknown new studio from Lithuania, which is not a powerhouse in games development. It released on early access, and to no surprise at all, it sold pretty much nothing in the first month. I think it was a few hundred or something like that. And then it plummeted down. For 3 or 4 months, it was a disaster in sales. They did the right things with the game. I mean, the game was cool. It was just unknown, and it needed a lot of work. And I was like a hound chasing people and influencers. So we got it covered at some point by the late Total Biscuit and a couple of big media that were mildly interested, but it was underwhelming. Then came full release, and it started picking up attention. And I don't remember how many how many reviews in Metacritic it ended up having, but out of Metacritic we had like 40 reviews in 7 different languages, something like that. It was the kind of game that needed momentum, that needed a community bigger and bigger, and needed a lot of work to make people understand the concept and how to play it. So again, it's not a rule of thumb. It won't happen all the time. If an early access is too long, it's probably bad news unless the game is successful. But will you have less opportunities for a good full release if you go to early access? Definitely not. I mean, not by definition.
Okay. Tomer?
I agree with everything Antonio said before Shai talked. Totally. The best games for early access are games with a lot of replay value. Actually, I had a lecture that I did, and it's on YouTube. It was Casual Connect here in Tel Aviv about early access. That was the subject. So you're welcome to watch it if you want to hear more about that. But yeah, I believe early access we've had early access before and with Judgment, and we're also having it now. I believe the advantages outweigh the disadvantages if your game is well suited for it. But I do think there are disadvantages, and let me just make it clear: nobody knows. Okay, Nobody knows for sure because you either release in early access or you don't release in early access. You can never compare them.
Yes.
Okay,
It's
every game is
Schrödinger's early access.
exactly Schrodinger's early access. You can never compare it, so nobody really knows for sure if it would have done better if you hadn't gone early access or if it would have gone better if you had. I do think there are some disadvantages. I saw that some press and YouTubers do not want to cover early access games. They refuse. Not a lot, but there are some. And that means that when you launch, you have less of a big boom. And then when you launch the full release, most of the wish listers that wanted to buy the game already bought it, and the other ones that haven't bought it yet are probably waiting for a discount. So for example, when we released our full game, I think wishlist conversion was less than 1%. But when we launched the early access, wishlist conversion was much higher because that's the first time people can buy the game. A lot of people buy it. Now, why does it matter? It matters because if you can get a lot of people to buy the game at the same time, you're going to reach a lot of high places on Steam. You're going to reach the top sellers, and you're going to get a lot of traffic from the main carousel. The algorithm really, really likes when there's something very interesting happening with the game. And that's why I believe you should try to get all the visibility in one day, in one launch day, and not spread it across weeks after launch. So, and when you launch in early access, assuming that you get a little bit less visibility because people see it's early access, they don't buy it, or people see it's early access and they don't want to cover it, then your launch is a bit weaker than it would have been if you would have launched after early access. But there are also a lot of advantages. Antonio mentioned some of them. I can add that players in early access are much more forgiving, and you will get much less negative reviews in early access than you would in a full release game, which can help if your game is not that good and it has some issues. Players will be more forgiving and more likely to give you better reviews. And review score matters, especially when you go down to mixed. If you go down to mixed, which is painted in orange in Steam, that can significantly lower your sales. So that's another advantage of early access. And another advantage is that you have 1, 2, 3 years, don't know how long you're in early access. All that time, you collect wish list, you collect followers, you collect more players. And then when you launch the full game, all those players are going to play the game because you're going to have, I hope, when you release the full game, you're going to have like a big update with a lot of new stuff to get everyone playing the game again. And that can make your full release even stronger because you build up an audience with a game and not just build up an audience with an idea for a game. Building up the audience when you already have the game and people can buy it and play it, it's much easier, so much easier.
I think it's important to highlight something that you say that no one really knows, and that applies to pretty much everything. There's no silver bullet. There's no recipe for success. If there was something that, I mean, if I could say, if you do this, it's going to work no matter what, I wouldn't be working for games. I would be working for Apple or Google and would be filthy rich. No one really knows. And there's no rule that apply for everyone. I've had these experiences with early access. Some other indie dev will tell you different stories, and they're both true. Since no one really knows how the algorithm works or what drives someone to buy a game or to wishlist a game, at the end of the day, you can't be 100% sure. As you say, Tomer, you can't run an A/B test of this thing. So you do what you think will work best. You try to learn from your mistakes, but you never really know. Which I know it's not exactly encouraging.
Yeah, and I think also what's the most important thing about early access is that it's a great tool to build a community.
Yes.
As you both mentioned. So you can actually use this time, and this is what we are doing right now, to build a strong community and then create the snowball effect of the launch itself, which is the most important thing. As Tomer mentioned, that when you launch the game, Try to get as much visibility, use all your resources to focus on that one day. This is like how Steam works. It's not that you can make it happen over time. You can, but launch day has a lot of weight on it. And brings me to our next topic, which is
Can I just add one more thing about early access, please? This is important.
Yes, please do.
Early access should not be used to decide if you will continue the game or not. To see if you release early access and it does well, then I'll finish it. If it doesn't do well, I spent less money. It should not be used like that. That's unethical, because people that buy early access game, it's not Kickstarter. It's people buy a game with a promise that you will finish the game. Don't plan on the early access money to finish the game. You have to be able to finish the game if you launch an early access, because you make a commitment to people, and it's unethical, and it's also bad for business, because people will
couldn't agree more. That will destroy your reputation. The money from early access is the icing on the cake, but if you need that money to survive, you will be better off, I don't know, finding a publisher or some money somewhere else, or just doing something else. If you take people's money and 6 months later on you take this game out of the store and call it a day, you're dead in the industry. No one will trust you for your next game, so don't do that.
Yeah, and this is also something that we talked before, that this industry, it's so tiny. Like everyone knows you. You think the Israeli industry is tiny. It goes the same up for the world. Yep. You see the same faces, the same people. So your reputation is really above everything here.
Yes.
So how do you approach launch day? Let's say we had an early access for a while. We built a community. Now in terms of reaching out to press, influencers, Twitch, YouTube, normal media, how would you approach that? What are your tips?
Wow. There's no one
keep
size.
it short. Yeah, I know. It's like something you can talk for a month about, and this is what you're doing. But in a 2 grain of salt, how do you do it?
There's no one size fits all recipe. My recommendation would be to play the strengths of every game. If you've got a community, for instance, because you've been on early access, you can do a release day broadcast on Steam and invite them to join the broadcast. If there's 1,000 people, poof, you're on the Steam store front page. As easy as that. Easy. You understand what I mean? Yeah. That depends. If your game looks great and it's super flashy and so forth, base your strategy on influencers. If your game is the sequel of something the spiritual sequel of some very popular game in the 90s that has a lot of fans between the journalists, then go to the press. It's impossible to say anything very specific without knowing the project or the game. Try to make as much noise as possible. That's like the golden rule, but how to approach that depends on the game.
Yeah. Influencers is very important, first of all.
Absolutely.
Like, bringing influencers, the usual media channels, like the whole PC Gamer and stuff like that, reaching out to the articles. And this is why it's also very important to work with a PR company, because you as developers, trust me, you won't have the time to deal with it. You have the game to make, and usually on the last minute a lot of bugs are happen, so you need to work on this. So very important tip on that.
It's not just that's important. What we PR people do is not rocket science. It's just we do it all the time, so we do it faster and in a more efficient way. But for instance, if you say, "Oh no, I'm reaching out to influencers. I sent an email to PewDiePie," that's not gonna work. So, identifying the right influences for your game is very important, and it doesn't need to be 5 million subscriber A-list influencers. Yeah, I do have PewDiePie's email, but he never reads it. So I was saying, you try with the really big ones, but if it's a small indie game, you have to take into account that the most likely outcome of that is that they will ignore you because they probably receive 100 emails per day. But if you find a guy with 50,000 subscribers who are super faithful, and you're doing this niche game, I don't know, Filthy Robot for strategy games, or Nucleum. They are amateurs doing stuff from their home with their daily job. They've got from 50,000 to 100,000 subscribers, but they are appealing right to your niche. If you're doing a strategy game, you'll be better off reaching out to these guys than to someone super big who's probably going to ignore you anyway.
And also look for games that, like, for example, I know Tomer has had a lot of experience with that. Reaching out to influencers that played similar games. So just look for, the games that you are kind of like and are kind of similar to your game. And just try to see influencers. What happened to my face? I'm blurred. Try to see influencers that play the games that you are similar like, and then reach out to them.
Or who cater to a similar audience. Maybe you want to, I don't know, you're doing a graphic adventure. They are big on Germany, so you should try to find some German influencer, even if he's not or she's not super focused on point and click games. But it's the kind of language or territory or audience or whatever that you want to reach out to.
Yeah,
Same about the press. It's like try to find people who already like that genre or who might be interested in the game. And when you're pitching the game, say so. Hey, I'm pitching this game to you because you like this other game, which is kind of similar to this. So I'm pretty sure you're going to enjoy this one.
Yeah, don't make a generic template and just send it to everyone.
If you can,
Yeah,
at least.
yeah. I think for like my tip is do like a template, but make it personal. So use a big like same thing, because otherwise you can work for a whole year about it, and you won't even reach 2% of influencers that can be relevant. Do like a template, but change it to look more personal. Like, I saw that you played this game. I think that we have this game, and I really like your channel. Even if you watch one video of his recent ones and say, I'm a fan of your channel. I saw your video that you uploaded about that, and it was really funny, the comment that you mentioned about. So kind of make it look like more personal.
Be careful with that, because they can sometimes spot when it's fake. Yeah,
No,
I'm a big
don't
fan
fake.
of yours, and
No,
be careful.
don't say I'm a big fan, but try to think smart and don't be like
Be careful.
transparent
Yeah,
about
try
it.
to be unique. Try to be a little bit more personal, but don't be fake.
Yeah.
So there are a few things that I consider must do for a Steam release, be it early access or full release. YouTubers is definitely, I especially like YouTubers, but streamers too, influencers in general are definitely a must-have. I personally prefer contacting them myself, because then it comes from the developer and not from PR. And I have tools that I built that crawl YouTube. I give them a list of games, and they search for all the YouTubers that played these games. And for Twitch, you have Solignome. It's a website that you can use to see who played which game and find streamers like that. So that's about influencers. And the second one is press. Of course, it's a must. You don't have much to lose, okay? And I won't talk too much about press, because I'm really rubbish with press. When I sent a general press release to no one specific, I got 3 coverages. And then when I contacted 40 people of the press directly, not even 1 coverage. So same game, by the way. Same game. Even someone that said, please let me know when you have something to write about the game and stuff. And then we made a big announcement, and I contacted her, and I haven't heard back.
It's definitely easier if you do it on a regular basis. Yes.
Yeah.
Someone's asking that, I don't know, Nessis, yeah, again, publishers, not random people, claim that having influences for story-driven games is a bad idea because people watch it instead of playing it, which is true. But here comes the important but. You're not a publisher. Publishers usually have a close relationship with the media, so they have it easier when it comes to getting coverage on the media. You need coverage, you need visibility. So making your game available to influencers is not the best scenario if it's a, say, point-and-click adventure, but sometimes it's the only thing you can do to get the game noticed. So while it's true what publishers say, up to some extent, um, it's also it's a lesser evil. That said, if someone prefers watching a gameplay rather than playing a point-and-click game, I honestly doubt they will be buying the game anyway. I mean, if you like playing football, you like playing football, and watching football is a different thing. Like watching football, but I'm terrible, so I don't like playing. That's the same.
And they will probably, if they start watching the game and they really enjoy it, they will probably stop watching and go
Exactly. Yeah. If someone just watches it from the get-go to the end, I honestly doubt that's your target audience anyway.
Yeah. That's what I do. I always watch 5 minutes of the game. It looks interesting. I go and buy it and play myself instead of watching. Some influencers are like must-have, by the way. There's Splattercat and Nucleum and Wonderbots, and these guys. That's what they do. They play indie games, and every day they play another game. They don't do long let's play series of 10, 20 chapters. They play different games every time, and those are perfect. And you should probably reach out to them for sure. And I had something else. Oh yeah, and embargo. Not everyone likes it. I personally think it's a good thing, especially if you have an early access to full launch. Ask the press and the influencers not to publish articles before the release day. Again, especially if you transition from early access to full release, because then if all the videos go up during a week before your release, and some people will buy a week before, some people will buy 5 days before, and then you won't have that big boom that will help you get to the top sellers. And also, I know some influencers like embargo because it reduces the pressure for them. So if like you send them a key 2 weeks in advance and you tell them don't publish anything until 2 weeks from now, then they know they have 2 weeks in which they can find the best time to play the game and make the video. And if you send it and say you can publish immediately, then they will be under pressure to be the first ones, because after 50 YouTubers already published it, it will be less interesting. Again, it depends on the games. The games that are a perfect fit for influencers, those that lets them express themselves and customize stuff like Minecraft, doesn't matter. Doesn't matter who does first and who does second the video.
Yeah, there are games that you see them for the first time and you know that they're going to sell because they are going to work with influencers. About embargoes, it's a good idea to try to focus all your coverage on release day if you can, but at the same time, don't get just ask nicely, because you don't have lawyers to enforce the embargo should they jump the gun. I've worked for some clients who actually did have lawyers and money to enforce an embargo. Then the media jumped the gun, posted the news against the embargo, and we didn't sue the media, because you don't sue a journalist. That's something you do not do. So don't go full lawyer mode. This is an embargo and this is the penalty if you break it. Just ask them. I kindly ask you to respect this embargo and not post anything until this day, because this will help us quite a lot, and we will appreciate if you help us too. That will work much better than writing big red letters, embargo, penalty, $10,000.
I have to add that although I said I like contacting influencers myself, if you do that, you have to do a lot of research. I spent two weeks only reading articles about how to contact influencers and watching video that influencers made about what makes a good email and stuff like that. If you're not going to use a professional to do that for you and you want to do it yourself, you have to do a lot of research. It takes a lot of time. Be prepared, because all these tips that we give you here, it's like 10% of what you can find online, not to mention if you work with someone who's experienced.
Yeah. And another important thing is have a live broadcast on your store page on the day of launch.
Yes.
Very important.
You feel that helps, Antonio? Because
yes,
I didn't feel it helping too much.
You don't need to do it yourself. You can record the video and put it on loop.
How does it help?
For a start, if you are one of the 6 most viewed games at that moment, you automatically go to the front page.
Yeah.
So
But
it's
if you're one of the 6 top streamers, you're probably going to be on the front page anyway.
but it's no, don't believe that. It's much easier than it looks like. Usually, if
Yeah.
you've got 1,000 people watching the stream, that's enough to jump to the front page. And I'm pretty sure that any popular game mildly popular game that coordinates with its community, that's important. Be really insisted on Discord or Twitter or whatever is your main means of communication with your community. I'm going to do this. I need your help, guys. Please be there, etc. Other than that, Steam, I think that has changed as of lately, but Steam was trying really hard to push their broadcast feature a lot last year. So they did give extra visibility to those games, a tiny bit to those games who were broadcasting, and the broadcast were everywhere on the community page. So it's not a silver bullet. Don't think that it will save your day, but recording a video and putting it on loop, it's so easy that it's totally worth the try. And you can use it for other things. You can do, for instance, I've seen some devs doing chats with the community, just like if it was Twitch, chats with the community, taking questions, doing dev diaries and in video form. Okay, this Friday, we're doing a Q&A with the community. Again, you want people to be as close as possible to the buy button.
Yeah.
So it's better that than answering everything on Reddit or Twitter or Facebook or whatever.
Yeah. Okay, guys. I just saw the time, and we have 9 minutes. We said we're gonna have like 20 minutes. As you saw, like we can talk for hours and hours and hours, and we won't cover half of what we have to say. Let's leave some time for questions. If someone has, if not, we can just keep talking and talking and talking. So, open mic, guys. Whoever wants to speak out. How does it go, Nama? How does it usually? How do you do it?
Usually people write in chat their questions and you read them, or Antonio or Tomer, and reply.
Okay.
There's one we didn't answer. Sorry.
Yeah.
Dorbar, sorry if I'm mispronouncing your names. Apologies. Would you recommend to publish a demo on Steam for the chance to get wish lists that will impress publishers? What do you think, guys? You did publish a demo recently, so Shai, you've got personal experience with that.
Sorry, I didn't see the question.
Demo
Okay, would you recommend to? No, actually, we didn't publish a demo.
No,
for us.
Good point. It was
They released a free game.
Yeah, we
released
a free game. Yeah, our game is free to play. Okay, so would you recommend? Okay, I have no idea. I didn't work with publishers, so I can't say.
I don't like demos. I'll say that. I don't like demos. I think it's worth it only if you have special featuring for the demo, like an event, like the Steam Festival is the obvious one. They require a demo to participate in the event, and they get you a lot of traffic if you have good placement in the festival. So for that, it's worth a limited time demo of an unreleased game. Okay. After the game is released, I'm totally against demos. That's me personally.
Yes.
I know some people like demos even after release. And in general, having a demo all the time online, I think it can reduce some of the interest in the game. But that's just my personal opinion, because I know very successful studios that they're in the top 10 wish lists on Steam, and they have a demo all the time, and they really believe that it helps them get traffic and everything. So as long as your demo is online, it's not just that people can play it and that it appears in the demos page on Steam. Influencers can play it, okay? And then they can do a video. If the demo is interesting enough and they're going to do a demo of the video, that's more traffic. So it can help. I personally prefer limited time demos. And then it's also, you don't have to spend a lot of resources on updating the demo, because it's a lot of work to have a demo that's, unless you just, if you have a story-based game, then you can take just the first chapter. That's easy. But a game like ours, a strategy game, we had to do a lot of work to adjust the demo. We removed a lot of content, and we made like a special tutorial that's very long, and the entire demo is one big tutorial. It's a lot of work.
Yeah, just pretty much fully agree with that. Depending on the kind of game, it's easy or not. So if you're gonna spend a lot of resources in doing a demo, I think as an indie, you should spend your resources somewhere else because your resources are very limited. It makes sense for an event like the Steam Festival or something like that. But at the same time, if it's a game that's not story driven, but an emergent gameplay type of game, it's going to probably give a wrong impression of the game because it will look smaller and with less possibilities than what it actually has. So for story-driven games, it's easy and it might work. If it's within the framework of a festival, it's probably worth the effort. But as a rule of thumb, should everyone have a demo? No. Yeah. Only when it makes sense, only in certain scenarios and only for certain games. There's a comment by Alex Nicola from Mitzi Games said he did a prologue. He's got a very cool experience with that. I'm not sure if we can hear his words or whatever, but he very recently had a demo on Steam that actually applied to that concept of releasing the prologue or a first chapter or something like that, rather than trying to give a vertical slice impression of the game.
I can share some info if you guys want.
Yeah,
please.
Go for it.
So, yeah, I released something called the prologue. It's a bit different than a demo in a sense that the prologue is actually a full game according to Steam. So it's a separate app, and it gets the full launch visibility as a regular game.
Free game.
It's a free game. And it has a lot of advantages. So first of all, I got around 7,000 people grabbing it, and something like 70 reviews. And from the reviews, you can learn a lot of stuff about how people actually will review it later. So what people like, what people hate. You get a lot of comments on your forums. You get to see a lot of data coming from analytics. And you can post updates to your community on the prologue about the real game. So I have like 5 launch visibilities on Steam that I can just like post an event, and then 10,000 people see it. So, and it's totally free, and anytime I want, I can remove it from Steam. So for now, I removed that, and I'm gonna bring it back later. And when I want to release my full game, that the prologue will disappear. I will just move everybody to the real one, and that's it.
And it sounds like a demo, but it's a prologue is definitely better because it's you get more visibility, I think. But I guess the main drawback I see in demos like that and prologues is that people can get enough of the game from playing it, and then okay, that's enough. If you have an amazing game and an amazing demo, and I know some games like that, Mindustry, it's like a very simplified version of Factorio. They had a free demo, and I'm pretty sure that like 90% of their purchases, and they did very well, came from that demo. I bought it after playing the demo, so I think a lot of people did. If you have a great demo, that's amazing. But if you have an okay demo, then people may, okay, I tried it, I played it, that's enough. Instead of, and the same people that would have bought the game.
Yeah, do a cliffhanger.
Yes.
Let's go to next question. We have time for one more. I see that Ophir Katz asked, any point in using any kind of paid advertisement, or is it futile when it comes to indie games? Good question.
Yeah. I think that it makes sense if you've got enough budget for it to make a dent. I mean, if you spend in 100, 200 euros, it's probably not worth it because it's not going to make a big difference, and you're spending time, resources, and efforts on that. If you got, say, 1,000, 1,500, something like that, and you do the right micro-targeting and you're targeting the right audience, then it can help, providing that you understand what you're getting out of that ads. Your best case scenario, you're getting people visiting your store page. I mean, the conversion is really low. So when to use these ads, depending on the kind of game, if it's very visual, if you're doing a crowdfunding campaign, if you have something that they can buy or follow at that moment, just to promote the brand, so to speak, unless you've got a great budget, probably save the money.
I also think it makes sense in some cases and not in others. Another important factor, other than what Antonio said, other than having enough budget to make a dent in micro-targeting, is what game you have. Because for judgment, it probably won't make sense. It's not attractive enough, and the conversion will be low. And we've tried, and it was not very good. And then with Dream Engines, we got like 3-4 times better click rate and also conversion to wish lists. And the game is not released, but we did some paid ads on Facebook for wish lists. So I really think it depends on the game, and if it can draw enough attention. If it's very niche, then probably less likely that paid ads will be worthwhile. But there are other forms of paid advertising, like paying influencers. Okay, instead of just trusting that the influencers will like the game, if your game is not attractive enough to the influencer, you can pay them to make it, and that will get you a lot of exposure.
But that's even more expensive, though.
That's even more expensive, and again, it's very important. Like if you find a perfect YouTuber that writes exactly to your niche audience, and they have and your game is attractive enough to that niche audience, so that a big number will convert, and yeah, then it can be worth it. Remember, again, everything, it's not just the conversion, because if you have a big YouTuber playing the game and 10,000 people watch it, and out of those 10,000, only 200 buy the game, that's pretty low. I'm just throwing numbers, but let's assume it's a low conversion rate. You still have the added bonus of Steam seeing that 200 people coming from outside bought the game, and hey, maybe there's something interesting going on with this game, and they're going to show it in more places. And that's something that we know for sure, because Steam employees said that it works like that. Okay, if you get external interest into a game, they will start showing the game more for a period of time to see how it goes. So it's not just the ROI that you get immediately. It also has an additional effect that's hard to track. Just yesterday, by the way, Steam added the ability to track conversion from ads.
Yes, finally.
Ah, they added it?
Yes.
Yesterday.
I don't keep up with the news. That's so congratulations to us all. We need to do another lecture on that. I think to summarize it, you do need to have a marketing budget. Again, you're an indie, so no one expects you to have $50,000 of a marketing budget when you launch, but do like a small piggy bank for that. Like, don't just launch and say, okay, I'm launching and whatever happens, happens. Try to have like a marketing strategy, even if it's paying a PR company, and even more so if you can have some influencers playing the game, but pick the right influencers for your game. Okay, last question, because we're already a little bit past time, and Antonio's time is very precious. So does you?
Thank you.
I'm putting it on you, man. we have a guest from Spain. You know, the time zone is different now. It's like you're 1 hour ahead of us, right?
No, actually, earlier.
No, you're 1 hour ahead of us. Okay, so
my wife approves your position, though.
Yeah. So again, we want Shlom Bait. It's called when you want your house to have peace in it. So it's very important, and we respect that. Does your website matter when launching on Steam? How often people browse websites of the games they want to purchase? Good question.
It doesn't matter to players.
Yeah.
It will matter. It can matter to press and influencers. It makes you, and especially publishers, by the way. If you want a publisher, you have to have a website, because it makes you seem more serious, more professional. The players probably will just see the game on Steam and decide if they want to buy it or not.
It's useful from a business point of view, so to speak, or for your social relations when you go to an event or something, because your game might be multi-platform. So you've got your website where you're linking to all the stores and all your social media, and you've got the bio of your company and your press kit. So having everything together in one place is useful to reach out to the media, to talk to a publisher or something like that. But it won't drive any sales at all. No one looks at websites with that intent in mind. They just go to the store page. So it's useful as your business card, an expanded version of your business card.
Cool. Guys, I want to thank both of our panelists who participated and shared a lot of their wisdom. I actually learned a lot from hearing you guys.
So did I.
Yeah, you see, so we all learned from this. I hope it was the same for you, everyone in our dear community. Nama, you have the mic, so if anyone wants to say like closing words, feel free.
Thank you for joining us. Please keep in touch in our Facebook page, GameIS, and see for our other lectures soon. We have twice a month a lecture like in different subjects, so please follow us. And if you want to join us and volunteer, you can, and you are more than welcome. And now I'm going to stop the recording. So if you have